I was told I was too ugly to be at my son's wedding. His fiancée even threatened to have me put in a nursing home before the vows. But what they didn't know? I was dying, yes. But I was also sitting on a secret worth millions. On the day they tried to erase me, I let them smile for the cameras one last time, before I took it all back. I wore the lavender blouse that day, the one with the little pearl buttons Tobias used to play with when he was a baby, the same earrings he gave me on Mother's Day when he was 12. As I stood in front of the mirror, I tried to see myself through his eyes, but all I saw was a tired woman, barely holding on, dressed in memories and regret. Yet, I smiled. Maybe today would be one of those days we'd laugh about later. Perhaps I'd embarrass myself, and Tobias would roll his eyes, Kendra would politely smile. Maybe I'd fold napkins, taste the cake. I was still his mother. I thought that mattered. He walked in without knocking. All confident swagger, the scent of his cologne lingering in the room. Tobias didn't even look at the cookies I'd baked, or the tea I brewed with the loose leaves he used to beg for. He just plopped down on the edge of my couch like he had better places to be. I stood before him, already knowing what was coming, but the words still hit me like a punch. "I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding," he said, like it was some kind of favor. I stood still, gripping the teacup I hadn't touched, my heart in my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. "It's just very curated," he said, adjusting his collar. "Very modern, minimalist. Kendra and I, we agreed. We want the guest list to reflect that." I laughed, barely holding it together. "You don't want your mother in your wedding photos?" He shifted in his seat, eyes avoiding mine. "It's not about photos." And in that moment, something inside me snapped. The rain was falling softly outside, its scent mixing with the heavy silence inside the room. I could feel the tension in the air as Tobias stood there, his back turned to me, just as cold as his fiancée Kendra. This wasn't the first time they'd made me feel like an outsider in my own life. But this was different. He didn't look at me, not even at the cookies I'd baked with his favorite chocolate. Not the tea I'd carefully brewed with the leaves he used to beg for when he was little. No, he just sat there, his words cutting deeper than anything I could have prepared for. "I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding," he said. His voice was steady, almost indifferent, like he wasn't ripping my heart to pieces. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. "It's very curated," he explained, eyes avoiding mine. "Modern, minimalist. Kendra and I agreed. We want the guest list to reflect that." I laughed, but it came out hollow, a desperate attempt to hold it together. "You don't want your mother in your wedding photos?" His words were like a slap. "It's not about photos. It was about presentation." He said it like it was nothing. I could feel a crack forming inside me. "You've been sick, the scarf, the coughing." He trailed off. "It might be uncomfortable for some of the guests." My heart dropped. Was I that much of a burden? "You're sick, Mom. We love you, but Kendra wants a certain experience," he continued. Then Kendra walked in, without a knock, just like she owned the place. She barely acknowledged me. "So, this is the place?" she said, eyes scanning my home like it was some kind of museum. "Cozy, very vintage." She didn't even look at me. "Nice to meet you," she said with that cold politeness. I was in my own home, and somehow, I felt like a stranger. "I just want to be there," I said, my voice trembling. "I can sit in the back. I don't need attention. I just want to see my son get married." Her eyes finally met mine, but they were as cold as ice. "We've already finalized the seating chart and the dress code. I'm sure you understand. It's about the vibe." It wasn't about the vibe. It was about me being a reminder of something they wanted to forget. Kendra continued. "You're sick. It's admirable you're trying, but the scarf, the pale skin, it'll make people uncomfortable." I couldn't breathe. Tobias added, "We can send you the photos. FaceTime you during the ceremony. It'll be like you're there." FaceTime, I whispered. "I want to be in the room." And then Kendra, ever the angel, smiled. But it wasn't kind. "Maybe we can talk after the honeymoon about long-term care, somewhere peaceful, a good place for recovery." It hit me then. She was talking about a nursing home. I looked at Tobias, my son, the boy I rocked to sleep every night, the boy I kissed before school. Where had he gone? "I gave you everything," I whispered, "everything I had." He sighed and stood, and just like that, the distance between us grew. The room was suffocating in its silence. The lingering scent of tea felt like a distant memory, fading with each heartbeat. My hands trembled, my heart thundering louder than the echo of footsteps that slipped away. Tobias's words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and foreboding. I reached for the scarf at my neck, the fabric chilling against my skin. Tightening it, a shiver surged down my spine. Was this the end of everything I knew, or the moment everything began to unravel? The door clicked shut behind them, and then it happened. "This is why Dad left you," he said, those words like daggers, striking deep. In that instant, something inside me froze. I had offered everything to him. Now he twisted my love into a weapon. I sat, stunned. The tea sat untouched, cold, just like my heart. Kendra turned toward the door. "We'll be in touch," she offered, her voice cool and rehearsed. "Let us know how your treatments go." Tobias leaned down, kissing the top of my scarf. It felt like a hollow gesture, like a farewell to a memory. "We love you, Mom. We really do." But they left without looking back. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I walked to the window, watching their car disappear down the street, and whispered to the empty room, "Thank you for showing me who you truly are." I tightened the scarf at my neck. This wasn't shame. It was a lifeline. Something had shifted within me. I had unfinished business now. Tobias would learn what it meant to trample over a mother who'd given everything and had nothing left to lose. No anger, just clarity. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream or curse or plead for answers. Instead, I sat in silence, swathed in a flannel robe worn thin by time, the kind I'd owned since Tobias was in high school. My frail hands folded in my lap, I stared out at the blinking streetlight illuminating the quiet road. I recalled when that light used to signal Tobias walking home, backpack bouncing, filled with stories and laughter. Now, it was just me, alone, with the weight of his words crushing me. "You'll ruin the photos. You'll make everyone uncomfortable." The sting of the last statement cut the deepest. How did we get here? The shadows in the room felt alive, listening closely, waiting for my next move. The air was thick with the smell of old paper, dust drifting in the stillness as I carefully opened the folder. Each page felt heavier than the last, yet my heart was pounding with a strange mix of hope and fear. Could this be the moment everything changed? The faint creak of the floorboards behind me made my heart skip a beat. I turned, tense, every inch of me frozen. Was someone there? Or was it just the weight of my own thoughts catching up with me? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I stood at the window watching their car vanish down the street, my fingers gripping the fabric of my old scarf like it was the last thing that could tether me to myself. "Thank you for showing me who you truly are," I whispered, the words bitter as they left my lips. Tobias had grown into a man who barely recognized me, his cruelty sharper than any wound I'd ever known. Michael had left us. I had known it wasn't because of me. It was easier to lie to myself, to protect Tobias from the truth. Michael didn't leave because of me. He left because he was too weak to stay. He didn't want to be a father, and that's a wound I could never heal. But I always told Tobias his father was just tired, just broken. Maybe it was better that way. Now, Tobias was the spitting image of him. Handsome, successful, cold, and cruel. It was like I was looking at Michael all over again. And it cut deeper than I ever imagined. Slowly, I shuffled to the closet, every step reminding me of how alone I truly was. The chemo had taken its toll on my body, but not my will. I knelt before the old filing cabinet, my hands trembling as I pulled out the folder. The label read, "Final." Inside, the papers were crisp, neatly organized. My will, life insurance policies, deeds to 3 rental homes, bank statements with more zeros than I had ever dared dream. I'd never lived fancy. Coupons for groceries, church shoes from the 90s, but I had built a quiet fortune. Penny by penny, year by year. The first property I bought was a wreck, an old duplex across the street. The widow's family didn't want the burden. I didn't have much, but I had inherited a little something from Aunt Millie, enough to make a bid. Then came another property, and another, and suddenly there was a little extra cash every month. No one knew, not even Tobias. The plan was to surprise him, a future built in silence. Would it be enough to bridge the gap? Or was it too late for redemption? I imagined the day I'd pass the funeral quiet and respectful, and then Monique would hand Tobias the letter. Inside it would say, "You always thought I had nothing, but I saved this for you. I wanted you to know that I believed in your future. That day will never come now." I picked up the will, stared at the signature at the bottom. Lorraine Elizabeth Massey. Right above it, Tobias's name, my only child, my only beneficiary. I reached over to my nightstand, opened the drawer, and pulled out my letter opener, a beautiful gold one Tobias had given me when he was still in college. It had my initials engraved in tiny cursive at the base. I used it to tear the will in half, then in quarters, then in eighths. I felt lighter after, like the air had returned to the room. The next morning, I called Monique Chambers, my oldest friend from church and my lawyer. We've known each other since we were 19, back when we sang in the choir together and believed our lives would be simpler than they turned out to be. Monique answered on the second ring. "Lorraine," she said, voice still thick with sleep. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be. Can you come by this afternoon? I need to rewrite my will." There was a pause. Then Monique said, "Is this about Tobias? He came by yesterday. I figured. I saw the wedding announcement. No mention of you. He asked me not to come. Said I'd ruin the aesthetic." Monique didn't respond. "And Kendra," I added, my voice hardening. "She told me I was a liability, that I should be sent to a home." Tobias just stood there. Silence again. "Bring the new documents," I said. "I already know who I want to leave it to. Are you sure about this? I'm dying, Monique. But not today. Today, I'm just taking back what's mine." Monique exhaled. "I'll bring everything." I hung up and walked to the kitchen. I made myself a pot of tea, buttered a slice of toast, and sat at the table with a yellow legal pad. The scent of fresh paint still lingers, a dusty, almost forgotten sweetness. I remember being young, brimming with hope, painting walls side by side with women whose names fade like whispers in the wind. The laughter, the stories shared, echo between the cracks of tired voices. Those sounds now stand in stark contrast to the solitude that fills my heart. How many times did I sit beside them, reading the Bible, offering comfort? Today, I feel like I'm the one forgotten. The weight of that truth presses down, heavy and suffocating, like the walls of the shelter I once cherished. But today is different. I wrote my new letter, not to Ethan Harris, but to the Rose House Foundation, a shelter for elderly women in South Carolina, lost and alone. I poured my heart into memories of painting those radiant walls, serving meals and sharing stories with women no one visits anymore. They've become me, trapped in silence and abandoned by the very families they once nurtured. As I finish my toast, my final instructions take shape. The house goes to the foundation. My rental homes will sell, proceeds going to those forgotten souls. My salon will stay open under Sheila's name, my last gift to a resilient woman. I write it all down, just as I write a poignant final note to Tobias. I loved you more than life, yet you tossed me aside for a woman who never even glanced my way. You get nothing now. I refuse to bury my legacy alongside someone who buried me while I was still alive. I set the pen down, gazing out the window. The streetlight flickers back to life, and the morning sun breaks through the clouds. Just like that, a new day dawns, a new will, a new ending. This time, I'm the author of my story. Monique Chambers rings the bell. She arrives carrying her black briefcase and 2 folders, knowing better than to knock. We've shared lifetimes together, friends since our choir days, breathing life into a space meant for shadows. When I open the door, I wear my scarf like a crown, moving slowly but purposefully. She says nothing, just steps inside, placing the briefcase on the table. I brewed tea, I say, but it's cold now. It doesn't matter, she replies, her voice steady. Neither of us needs to speak. In silence, we share years of burdens and hopes gathered like dust in the corners of our hearts. This is where I reclaim my strength. Beyond estrangement and betrayal, I choose reclaiming respect and find my truth. We've got work to do. I settled at the table, the legal pad open before me, filled with shaky handwriting from the night before. Each stroke of the pen felt like a battle, but the message was clear. I slid the paper toward Monique, who read it with a careful eye. Then she pulled out a fresh set of documents, starting a new will from scratch. I watched her, the silence thick with unspoken words, before finally breaking it. Ever tell you why I started saving money? Monique didn't look up. You said you wanted to make sure Tobias never went without. That was part of it, I replied, my voice steady. But it was more than that. I watched too many women die broke. Women who worked just as hard as I did. Women who gave their lives to ungrateful husbands and children who paid them dust. I promised myself I'd never go out like that. You won't, Monique said, scribbling something at the bottom of a form. You're going out loud. I smiled, a flicker of hope igniting within me. I was going to surprise him. Leave everything, even the letters. I had one written for every birthday until he turned 50, all tucked away in a shoebox. Monique paused, her pen hovering. What are you going to do with them now? I'll burn them, I said, the words tasting bitter. He doesn't get those anymore. He doesn't get me. We worked in silence for the next hour. I provided account numbers, property addresses, and the name of my banker at Citizens Trust. I even had an envelope of cash tucked inside my sewing drawer, $10,000 in emergency bills, wrapped in rubber bands, labeled in case the world ends. Monique listed every asset, every dollar, every possession worth naming. At the top of the new will, I dictated the name of the sole beneficiary, the Rose House Foundation. Monique raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to give them everything? They've never asked me to hide who I am, I replied, my voice firm. They don't care what I look like. They don't treat old women like we're furniture they forgot to move. The flickering light bulb overhead cast eerie shadows across the aging walls. Suddenly, I paused, my pen hovering above the page. Did you ever think Tobias might not be the child you wanted him to be? The weight of my words hung heavy, tightening around my chest. An unexpected flood of memories engulfed me, not just of love, but of regret. Moments flashed before my eyes, a toddler's laughter, a growing distance. In that heartbeat, I realized my motivation was not just about respect, it was also about fearing the truth of what I might lose forever. This was my moment to reclaim my strength. Beyond estrangement and betrayal, I choose to find my truth. The scent of fresh-cut grass wafted through the air, mingling with the distant laughter of children playing. I was back in the backyard of our old home, the sun casting a warm glow on my son as he chased after a butterfly. His laughter echoed in my ears, a bittersweet reminder of the bond we once shared. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on my chest, the joy of that moment overshadowed by the shadows of our estrangement. How did we drift so far apart? The memory stung, a painful reminder of what was lost. "You don't want to leave anything to Tobias?" Monique asked gently. I stared at the window. The curtains were drawn, but the light still streamed in. I left him my whole life. That's enough. Monique nodded and continued. By the time we were finished, my hand was shaking from the effort of signing. Monique slid the will in front of me, and I pressed the pen to the paper. My signature wasn't as elegant as it used to be, but it was mine, and it was final. I also wrote a letter, I said once the last document was signed, to explain why. "You want me to give it to him?" "Not yet," I said. "Let him have his wedding. Let him smile in his tux and show off his new bride. Let him think he won." Monique glanced at me. "And then, you give him the envelope right in front of everyone." "Lorraine, you really want to make a scene?" "I'm not making a scene. I'm ending one." He started it the day he told me I was too ugly to be seen. Monique nodded solemnly. We sat together for a while longer, the legal documents packed neatly back into the briefcase, the envelope sealed and resting on the table. My breathing was shallow again. My skin was pale, almost translucent beneath the kitchen lights. But there was a fire in my eyes that hadn't been there in years. "You think I'm being cruel?" I asked softly. Monique reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "No, I think you're being honest. And I think he's lucky you didn't do worse." I chuckled. "Don't tempt me." We both laughed, a sound that felt like old times, like Sunday potlucks and choir robes, like joy that still had a place in my lungs. But underneath it, there was something heavier, something permanent, the truth of a woman who had given everything and now had nothing left to lose. As Monique stood to leave, I handed her the manila envelope with Tobias's name on it. "Hold on to this," I said, "and promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't let him cry and change your mind. You hand it to him exactly when I said." In that moment, I felt the weight of my choices. I was ready to reclaim my voice, to confront the past, and to seek the respect I deserved. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to face it head-on. Monique nodded, her eyes a mix of sympathy and understanding. "I promise." As I walked her to the door, every step felt heavier. After she drove off, I locked the door, sealing myself in the solitude of my home. The silence wrapped around me, comfortable yet suffocating. I switched off the lights, casting shadows across the room, and made my way to the bedroom. There, beneath my bed, lay the shoebox filled with birthday letters. Each one carried a memory, a whisper of moments that felt like a lifetime ago. I took them to the kitchen, tearing them apart like the bonds that once held us together. The letter for his 30th birthday, the one for his wedding anniversary starting with, "If you're ever feeling lost." Every rip was cathartic. I watched each piece vanish into the trash can, and by the time I finished, a strange clarity washed over me. My hands smelled of ash and ink, but my heart? It felt lighter than air. I moved to the sink, washing away the remnants of the past, gazing at my reflection in the dim light. The scarf wrapped around my head felt heavy, but my eyes burned with a fierce determination. I whispered to myself, "I'm not done yet. And when I am, the world better remember my name." Just then, a thick cream envelope caught my attention as I shuffled through the mail. It pulled me in with its gold lettering and embossed trim. I opened it on the porch, my fingers trembling not just from the medication, but from a rush of emotions. It was an invitation, not from Tobias, thankfully, but from Cousin Renee. Always showing up at family events, plates piled high with dessert and secrets. Inside, I found a card, beautifully crafted, showcasing a glossy photo of Tobias and Kendra. They stood beneath a pristine white arch, her gown hugging every curve, him looking like he had just stepped out of a fairy tale. Their smiles shone like the sun, bright and unwavering. I stared at the image longer than I should have, hoping to find a hint of doubt, a shadow of insecurity. But they beamed, locked in a moment of perfection. As the last letter crumples and slips from her fingers, she feels a rush of clarity. Yet, what lurks in the shadows of the kitchen? The silence suffocates her, thick with unspoken words and buried emotions. She meets her own gaze in the dim reflection, longing for absolution, yet haunted by unseen ghosts. A distant car horn jolts her back, breaking the stillness. Will she have the courage to confront the past that threatens to consume her? The ceremony had been relocated to a picturesque vineyard just outside Charleston. Surrounded by white roses, it oozed elegance. The invitation's smaller note read, "We'd love for you to join us and celebrate this special day. Quietly, of course. Please sit in the designated family section and respect the couple's wishes." I let out a soft chuckle. Tobias probably agreed to this as a protective gesture, a bone tossed to soothe guilt. Or maybe it was Kendra's crafty way of appearing gracious without ever uttering an apology. Either way, the message was unmistakable. I was to be a ghost. I carefully folded the card and set it on the kitchen counter. My decision came quickly. I wasn't going for them. I was going for me. On the wedding morning, I woke before dawn, the house shrouded in silence. The sun had yet to peek over the horizon, casting a soft, almost eerie glow. In the bathroom, I bathed slowly, letting my fingers linger on my skin, trying to memorize what strength remained within me. I slipped into a soft gray suit, one I'd donned for Easter Sundays, and wrapped my head in a deep blue scarf with silver stitching. The brooch my mother gifted me at graduation, a small silver dove, worn but still gleaming, sparkled against the fabric. My reflection caught me off guard. My frame seemed smaller, almost fragile, yet my eyes held a fierce determination. Today, I had a mission. Monique arrived exactly on time, stylish in her navy pantsuit and low heels. She carried a sealed manila envelope marked with Tobias's name in her briefcase. I handed her a small black purse with tissues, a bottle of water, and a second envelope. "That one's for Kendra," I instructed, my voice steady. "Give it to her afterward." Monique scrutinized me, her brows furrowing in concern. "Are you sure you're up for this?" she asked. I nodded, a sense of resolve washing over me. "I need to see it. Just once. I want to gauge how far he thinks he's come." We rode in silence, the car humming softly as the vineyard drew closer, the anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Would the truth be as bright as the sun rising behind us? Or would it reveal the shadows we all hoped to escape? The faint scent of rain lingered, merging with the rustle of leaves outside. Each moment dripped with unspoken words, creating a thick tension that made my heart race. What awaited me there? Would it be absolution or more heartbreak? My hands trembled. This journey was just beginning. The vineyard stretched before me, its rows of green vines winding into the hills, bathed in soft sunlight. The guests, dressed in pastels and champagne hues, floated under white tents, their laughter mingling with the gentle notes of a jazz quartet. I sat in the car for a moment, breathing it all in. "He spared no expense," Monique muttered. "Not with my money," I whispered back. Stepping out of the car, Monique steadied me as we made our way toward the seats. A few polite glances came our way. No one knew the woman in the soft gray suit and blue scarf was the reason this wedding was even happening. I sat in the third row, exactly as requested. The ceremony began, and Tobias appeared, looking polished and proud. Kendra followed, radiant in a gown that sparkled in the sun. The crowd gasped, but my eyes never left Tobias. He didn't look my way. The officiant spoke of unity, trust, of honoring the ones who raised you. Tobias shifted when parents were mentioned, but he never looked back. As the vows dragged on, Kendra teared up, and Tobias smiled that perfect smile, charming everyone. They exchanged rings, kissed, and turned to face the crowd, now husband and wife. Applause erupted, cameras flashed, people rose to their feet, but I stayed seated, the air around me thick with the weight of unspoken words. Now. Not yet, I whispered to Monique, my voice steady but tight. The couple moved down the aisle, posing for photos, laughing with friends. Kendra kissed Tobias's cheek, and he pulled her close as if to say, "This is everything we've worked for." I stayed still, hands clenched in my lap, my breath slow, shallow. As the reception tent doors opened, guests began to move inside. I turned to Monique and gave her a single nod. A momentary pause, and then the air around me seemed to crackle. Something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. And then, through the crowd, my heart skipped. Tobias's best man, someone I never expected to see, emerged. Familiar. A face from my past, buried beneath layers of secrets. The music faded into silence. The air, once filled with the scent of floral fragrance, now felt sharp and cold. What was this twist of fate? Was this the reconciliation I sought? Or had life brought us all back together for a reason that would break everything wide open? Monique stood tall, the sunlight catching the edges of her envelope as she strode toward the couple posing beneath the floral arch. Kendra's smile faltered, confusion crossing her features. Tobias's grin faded, recognition dawning. "Congratulations," Monique said with unnerving calm. "This is from your mother." She extended the envelope towards Tobias, then pivoted, passing another to Kendra. Before either could react, she retreated to my side. "Done," she murmured. My heart raced as I slowly rose, gripping my cane. Across the field, Tobias's fingers trembled, prying open the envelope. His face transformed. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally a wild panic. He flipped through the pages, eyes darting as if seeking the ground to swallow him whole. I locked eyes with him. No wave, no smile, just a slow turn back towards the car, my chest heavy. Let him bask in this moment, this perfect day filled with light, because soon, everything else, it would belong to me. The guests continued their laughter, clinking glasses, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. Tobias stood frozen, manila envelope clutched tight, his complexion drained beneath the warm tones of his skin. I could see the pulse in his temple, tension thrumming in the air. His lips parted, perhaps muttering a silent question or a plea, as if grasping for the breath snatched away by those fateful pages. Impatience flashed in Kendra's eyes, her frustration boiling over. "What is it?" she snapped, glancing over his shoulder. Her hand snagged the second envelope Monique had offered. In one swift motion she tore it open, the rip tearing through the festive atmosphere. Inside lay a single handwritten note on ivory stationery, its words a cold echo of my voice. "Kendra, I won't make this about insults. I won't relive the moment you looked me in the eye and threatened to put me away like yesterday's trash. But I will tell you this." What secrets did this letter hold? And would it be the key to our long-awaited reckoning? As the sun dipped lower, the ominous weight of unanswered questions hung thick in the air, whispers of confrontation waiting just beneath the surface. What consequences would follow this unveiling, in a world where betrayal and love danced a tightrope? The room fell silent, the tension palpable as Lorraine's words hung in the air like a thick fog. Monique's letter weighed heavy in Tobias's hands, every word a dagger aimed at the heart of their fractured relationship. Outside, the city buzzed, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within. Lorraine's eyes flickered with confusion and betrayal, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. What did it all mean? Why had she kept this from him? The answer lingered, just out of reach, fueling the emotional chasm between mother and son. If you're marrying Tobias for what you think you're getting, I suggest you find a new dress and a new life. He has nothing now. He earned it. Kendra's jaw dropped. What the hell does that mean? Tobias didn't answer. He flipped through the legal documents Monique had enclosed, pages of neatly formatted text signed and stamped. The will was clear. Every asset Lorraine had, her properties, her accounts, her shares in the beauty salon, was left to the Rose House Foundation. Nothing for him, not a dime, no trust fund, not even the pearls he'd once given her as a child. The final page was a personal letter. Tobias's hands trembled as he read it. Tobias, you were born from love. You were raised with sacrifice. I scrubbed hospital floors so you could have a future. I wore shoes until the soles peeled off. I said no to things I needed so you could say yes to everything you wanted. And when I got sick, I still wanted to leave you everything. Even though you hadn't called in weeks, even though you never once went with me to treatment, I still wanted you to have the fruits of my labor. Then you opened your mouth and told me I was too ugly to be seen at your wedding. And that's when I realized I didn't fail as a mother. You failed as a son. So now I leave you nothing but your name. I hope you build something with it. Goodbye. He read it once, then again, his hands shaking violently each time. The smile he had worn like a polished mask cracked in two. A murmur spread through the guests. The pianist stopped playing. Someone asked what was happening. Kendra turned to Tobias, panic rising in her voice. Is this real? Tell me this isn't real? Tobias looked at her, his face ashen. She left me nothing. Kendra stared at him as if he had just told her he was bankrupt. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She gave away everything. You told me she was dying. You said she is dying. He snapped. Exactly. Kendra hissed. So what were you waiting for? The hug? The words stung as they hung in the air, their truth more bitter than any of them could have anticipated. The emotional betrayal, the years of hidden resentment, and the weight of a broken relationship now spilled into the open. What would Tobias do with the name his mother left him? Would he rebuild, or would he crumble under the weight of it all? You let her take everything because you couldn't fake respect for just 3 hours. Tobias didn't respond. Kendra's eyes darted around the venue, feeling the weight of too many gazes. Phones were out. Whispers morphed into pointed fingers. He stepped back, the tension thickening. I'm not marrying a broke man who can't even control his own mother. The words hit harder than any slap. Tobias, please, he pleaded, reaching for her hand. This doesn't change us. We can still... She yanked her hand away. You embarrassed me. You let her humiliate me. I didn't know she was sitting right there, he shot back, pointing toward the third row. You let her come to the wedding. A hush fell over the guests. The reception tent felt frozen in time. Tobias turned slowly to the spot where I had been seated. I was gone. All that remained was a folded scarf on the chair, blue with silver threading, gently placed, deliberately left. Kendra spun on her heel and stormed off, her bouquet forgotten on the grass. Her bridesmaids hurried after her, heels clicking, whispers trailing like smoke. Tobias stood alone in front of the floral arch where they had just exchanged vows. The photographer quietly lowered his camera. A distant cousin, someone who had known me long ago, stepped forward and placed a hand on Tobias's shoulder. Son, he said softly, that woman walked through hell to raise you. You should have let her sit in the front row. Tobias couldn't speak. He just stood there, the envelope in one hand, his wedding unraveling in the other. Meanwhile, I had already driven home, sitting by my window, sipping tea. I didn't need to see it to know it happened. I didn't need to hear it to feel it. I had waited for this moment. Then it came, quiet, precise, clean. I looked out at the streetlight flickering on across the road and whispered to myself, this is for every mother who was told she wasn't enough. And this time, the tears that slipped down my cheek weren't from sadness. They were from a deep, unyielding strength. They were tears of peace. You see, when you beat cancer, no one expects you to win in silence. They want the grand speech, the glossy photos with the triumphant smile and that doctor who looks on proudly. But when I got that call from my oncologist, when she told me the treatment worked and the scans were clear, I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just stared out the window, folding the news inside me like a precious secret. Good, I said, because I had already come to terms with dying. But now, I had something even better. Peace while living. I didn't tell Tobias. He didn't deserve to know. I let him believe I was gone. The lawyer followed my instructions. The obituary ran. The silence did its work. The world mourned me, but I was very much alive. I slipped away from Charleston 2 days after the wedding. Quietly, no goodbyes, just a leather handbag, my passport, and one final letter left on Monique's kitchen counter. It simply said, "It's done. Thank you. I now live in a coastal village in southern Spain. The air smells like oranges and sea salt. My neighbors don't know my name. I tell them to call me Ellie. I rent a small home with blue shutters, an old courtyard where I grow mint and basil, where I sit in the afternoons, sipping tea with a wool blanket draped over my knees. I still have some money, nothing extravagant. Most of what I had, I gave away. But enough to buy my time, enough to keep the lights on, enough to start fresh in a place where I'm not seen as a ghost or a burden. Back home, I hear they still talk about me. Monique told me that the Rose House Foundation renamed its main building Massey Hall. Donations poured in after my story went viral. Someone shared a photo of me with the other women at the shelter, the caption reading, "She gave us everything her family threw away." I never sought that kind of attention, but now, in my quiet corner of Spain, I'm glad it happened. The phone call came, and I felt nothing. Not joy, not relief, just silence. The cancer had gone. But I wasn't celebrating. I'd already made peace with the idea of dying. This news? It was just a small shift. I wasn't dead, but Tobias? He thought I was, and he had to. He had to learn the hard way that the world wasn't going to bend around him anymore. I didn't give him a grand farewell. No. I let the silence speak for me. 2 days after the wedding, I was gone. No goodbyes. Just a letter for Monique, with a simple message. "It's done. Thank you. I'm living in Spain now." Quietly, I became a ghost. No one knew where I was. No one would. Back home, they mourned. They wrote tributes, hashtagged my name, and then they tried to fix everything. Tobias tried to claw back what he thought was his. But my will, unbreakable. My final letter, his undoing. I gave you everything, and you asked for more. You told me I was too ugly for this world, so now I'm in one where you don't exist. The air in Spain smells like oranges and sea salt, but in the silence of my new life, I'm finally free. My mornings? Quiet. I walk to the market, buy bread, sip tea as the sun paints the stones gold. And Tobias? He lives in the silence I left for him. That's his inheritance. That's the only thing I owe him. The scarf I left behind. It's not for me to wonder about. Let the world imagine who I was. Let them teach my name. Give me honors I never wanted. Because, honestly, I'm not resting in peace. I'm living in it.